All right, this might be deja vu. This might be a reprise. This might be a WTF moment. Might be all of the above, but yeah. You see the flyer, you hear the voice, you see the backdrop. You know it's the teaser for what's about to happen. Oh yeah. Running a little bit late tonight. A classic example of bad time management on my behalf. But I'm here. I'll take the full responsibility. It's me, MT, your host Malcolm Tent, for the latest episode of Tent Talks Tunes. Boy, look at that. You can still see where I spilled water all over my shirt earlier. You can see that we're running quite a bit late tonight. It's been one of those days, let me tell you. I'm sure everybody out there has had one of those days. I've been having one of those days today. So let's drink some more water and a toast to one of those days and see if I can somehow not spill it all over myself. In fact, that looks really gauche. What kind of shirt am I wearing underneath this? I'm going to take off this water-stained shirt. I'm going to disrobe in public one layer at a time. And put on something a little bit more becoming. A little bit drier, for that matter. Wouldn't you know it's an Antiseen sweatshirt? Yes! Now I got the look that I want to know better. Now I got the look it's all together. Working, playing, tent talk tuning is what I'm a-doing. So let's rejigger the camera just a little bit, get a slightly better angle there. And, get it better framed. No, that's not the right way. Let's try like that a little bit. Hope you guys will bear with me here. This is live Facebook streaming at its best. Maybe at its worst. It might not get any worse than this. I'm not exactly sure. John Bridges says, here, water. John Bridges is a man well acquainted with holy water. Yes. John Bridges, a.k.a. King James Jr. from Wilmington, North Carolina. Welcome aboard, Mr. Bridges. Hello, Ray Gelman from Tucson, Arizona. And anybody else who might be on board for Tent Talks Tunes. Okay, we're established. I can see that I am live. I feel a little bit less discombobulated now. Let's get right down to it, shall we? Let's check the mailbox, the bulletin board, and the calendar. Well, as seems to be the case so often, we can check the calendar and the bulletin board all at once. They don't have a whole heck of a lot going on until the last week of May. Hello, Nick. Nick Sampson is in the house. Hello, Nick. Good to see ya. May 20th. Antiseen. Tipsy Burrow. Charlotte, North Carolina. 8 p.m. Free show. Free show, all ages. You don't get to see Antiseen for free very much, and the all ages crowd doesn't get much of a chance either. So this is a rare opportunity. You can catch us at a hometown venue in front of a hometown crowd. Every time we played the Tipsy Burrow, it's been a barn burner, and I can't see any reason why this next upcoming show wouldn't be. I think it's going to be. According to Mad Brother Ward, who is the editor emeritus of Antiseen and also our guitar player, he's the guy who puts together all the set lists, and he says he's put together a mega set list for this show on May 20th, and also for the gig we're playing on May 21st, the next night in Virginia Beach. Yes, Antiseen in Virginia Beach, Virginia, on May 21st. Promoted by my good friend David Heldick. Very excited to play that one. Hopefully by next week I will have had the wherewithal, the presence of mind to have printed a flyer for that one, which I can show you, and ruthlessly work, hype, shill, promote, and flog that gig as well. So stay tuned, everybody, and stay hydrated. All right, that's the calendar and the bulletin board. Let's check the mailbox, shall we? I don't know if it's been a slow mail week or not, because I have not actually been to the post office in the better part of a week. Mainly because the weather in Connecticut has been so beautiful that I've been riding my bike a lot of places. And I actually live equidistant between two post offices. The main one that we all know, P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut 06470, is about 4 miles that way, but it's a very, very up and down bike ride over some big-ass hills, and there's also lots of traffic in that direction and no real room for a bicycle. Whereas the other post office is a more flat, easygoing ride with less traffic. So when I'm on my bike, I go to that post office, which means I never check the P.O. box. So if something's come in the mail, I haven't seen it, by and large, except for stuff that arrived late last week. And I'm very happy to show you those items, the ones that did arrive at P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut 06470. First, a couple of band business pieces now. If you're watching Tent Talks Tunes, you are no doubt cut from the same cloth that I am, which is the record collector fanboy geek cloth. I just love records and things having to do with records and vinyl and bands and being in a band and all the accoutrements that come with it. So you can imagine how delighted, how stoked, how utterly psyched I was to find a package from the unimpeachable president for life himself, Mr. Jeffrey K. Clayton, the lead singer of Antiseen Incorporated, with not one, but two test pressings, baby. Test pressings for the new Antiseen 45 RPM single entitled Are You Sure Hank Done It That Way? Yes, it is Antiseen doing Waylon with some special guests, and I must say this thing is a rager. This is a really, really cool record, and I am absolutely proud to be a part of it. So we got the test pressing. We have a sort of mock-up of the front cover, which means the actual pressed vinyl cannot be too terribly far behind. Antiseen gets all of our stuff pressed at Cascade Records out in Oregon. And they've got these really cool Boss custom labels for their test pressings. So test pressings themselves are a work of art, and I love these things. Can I get an amen, brethren and sistren? Amen for Boss-looking test pressings. Let me see some amens. Amen. I know John Bridges has got at least one amen out there. And I don't know if the exact count of this is 18, but there are apparently 18 copies of this record. Probably a couple more that Cascade has, but we had 18 of them. That ain't much, kids. That's instant rarity. And they're mine. All mine. Join a band as awesome as Antiseen, and you too can start hoarding test pressings like that. Amen, says Ray. Amen, says Traven Grover, way out there in Michigan. Thanks for tuning in, Traven. I've played for Traven Grover in the past, and it was a good show. Hope we get to do it again sooner than later. Also in the mail, just a couple more things. I found this record when I was going through my record collection, as I do periodically, because what good is a record collection if you don't go through it and listen to the damn things occasionally? And I found this really awesome 45 by a guy named Menard Rogers. And the record was called Ain't Nothing But a Titty. True fact, kids, I can't make this stuff up. Ain't Nothing But a Titty by Menard Rogers. And it's a wild record. Wild 45 RPM single. So I, of course, you know, being the modern sort of guy that I am, went on a mad hare chase looking for more records by Menard Rogers, which nowadays you can do. It's pretty easy. And I actually found out this guy has not only several 45s out, which all appear to be pretty wild, but he had an album out. And with my due diligence, I was able to find a really affordable copy of the LP by Menard Rogers, When I opened up the box, I fell in love with this record instantly, because the back cover shamelessly rips off the cover design from Stax Records, Atlantic, Atco, all those great mid and late 60s soul albums on the Atlantic, Stax, Atco label all had a design just like that on the back. I think he even took the exact decoration from the back of either an Atlantic or a Stax record and just pasted his own information in there. It's got a couple of really grainy, blurry, low-def photos of the artist in question doing something. I can't really tell what he's doing. Posing somehow. And according to the liner notes, Menard Rogers, birthday, February 4th, 1929, Duncan, Mississippi, ... From the government file. And it goes through his resume. From the government file. These liner notes are from the government file. And it's got all the various songs on it, including the single, Ain't Nothing But a Titty. But then I flipped this thing over and I saw, yep, there it is. The title of the album, Oh My Love, Titty Can't Be Still. Oh My Love, Titty Can't Be Still. With a picture of the artist himself, Menard Rogers, looking like he's, I don't know, having a bad digestion day. Maybe someone put a tack on his piano stool. I don't know. But there he is, Menard Rogers, the man responsible for Ain't Nothing But a Titty, and the album itself, Oh My Love, Titty Can't Be Still. And it's sealed. Sealed. I am going to crack it open. Because when you got an album called Oh My Love, Titty Can't Be Still, you know it's got to be good. So that came in the mail. I'm really happy about that. Can I get another amen from Menard Rogers and his Oh My Love, Titty Can't Be Still album? Woo! From the same seller, I got also a very cheap, very inexpensive, one of these disco remix 12-inch singles from the early 1980s. These populate the dollar bins, or at least they used to. This one's called Hunks and Chunks by a so-called mix master. And what it is a bootleg disco mix of the hits of the day, strung together probably seamlessly with, you know, the various break beats in the middle. And the reason I got this one is because there is a sample of Devo doing Whip It toward the end of side, I guess it's side 1 and side 2. It's the same thing on each side. So people say, Malcolm Tent, what kind of a Devo completist are you? I'm enough of a Devo completist where I paid $6 for this cruddy old disco remix boot 12-inch because it's got probably 30 seconds of Devo on it. But you'll notice that I only paid $6 for it and not a cent more. The depth of my obsession goes no deeper than that. Just so you know. I'm a thrifty fanboy. I'll be playing this later tonight along with Menard Rogers. Ray Gelman has pointed out very aptly that titties can be still. Thank you, Ray Gelman, for that salient observation. That's one reason why I like the damn thing so much. They just can't be still. I'm just saying. And one last little item of news before we get down to the meat of the matter, which is, of course, Clash Singles Bonanza. I did a thing recently that needed to be done for many, many, many years. Yes, I did a thing. What kind of a thing did I do? I'll tell you what kind of a thing I did. The story goes back to the fateful day in 1984 when I was working at Open Books and Records in North Miami Beach when the Hellhammer EP arrived in the mail as a promo. We got a promo copy of Hellhammer from the label. It was on Metal Blade Records, and you can see it's a promo because of the cut corner. I'll never forget it. It was a Saturday. I was working at Open. My boss, Leslie Wimmer, opened up the package, took out this Hellhammer record, put it on the turntable, and about 30 seconds into it said, "What the hell is this?" and took it off. within that 30 seconds between the time that she dropped the needle on the record and took the needle off in disgust, I was hooked. See that hook? It went right in there, and Hellhammer reeled me in, and I've been in the bag ever since. So I bought this very copy from Leslie for $4 on that fateful day, and it's been with me ever since. And since then, I've been absolutely fiendish about Hellhammer and the band that came after them, Celtic Frost. Now, one of the many, many grails, and by the way, a couple of years ago, just to see what would happen, I typed in Holy Grail to the eBay search engine, and I came up with something like 56,000 Holy Grails. There's a lot of Holy Grails out there. But one of my Holy Grails for a long time was the original Hellhammer demo entitled Satanic Rights. And it took me years and years and years to get a copy of that demo, and when I finally got it, I was delighted, but at the same time really disappointed, because the mix on that demo, it's all guitars and all drums, and the bass is practically non-existent. There's virtually no bass on the entire demo. And I found out later, when I got a copy of their first demo called Death Fiend, probably why that is, because on the Death Fiend demo, the mix has the bass obnoxiously high, so the bass drowns out everything. So I guess for their second demo, they mixed the bass too low. They overcompensated for it in the mix. So the songs are awesome, but the listening experience is just a little bit less than perfect because there's no bass on it. So what did I do recently, just a few nights ago? I said, I can't stand it anymore. I've been listening to this demo for over 30 years now, and there's no bass. I'm a bass player. I have a bass guitar. And not only that, I've got the modern technology at my disposal to take some liberties with that original demo. So, I strapped on the Thunder Lumba, plugged it into my home recording device, synced up the track Messiah from the second Hellhammer demo, and I put a bass part on that mother. And being the modern guy that I am, I posted a video of it on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and look up Messiah with added bass, that's what I did. And play it loud, because it is one of the, it was already a song that was awesome beyond belief in its primitive, metallic, simplistic brutality. But I swear to God, with some bass put on it, Goosebump City, kids. Yes, I took a liberty. I totally took a liberty. I painted the mustache on the Mona Lisa, but I think that Mona Lisa looks better with a mustache. So look it up, kids. Messiah with added bass. I'll post a link later after I sign off. Made me very happy when I listened to it. Let's drink to the willful desecration of great works of art when they're done by me. All right, kids, let's talk tunes. Last week, I talked about The Clash. I went through the entire Clash album catalog one at a time, and it was a lot of fun, and everybody responded really well. And wouldn't you know, I sold a bunch of Clash records because of that. Thank you very much, everybody who bought a Clash record, or 2, or 3, or 4. As usual, I thought I was going to get to do all of the albums and the singles in one show, but it was not possible. I went 90 minutes last week just talking about the albums. So today we're going to address the singles, and the singles are, for the most part, for sale. And in the usual fashion, if you see something and you want it, message me, direct message me, and I'll see it in my inbox a little bit later. And first come, first served. Ray Gelman says that she listened to Sandinista this week because of me. Well, is that good or bad, Ray? Is that a thumbs up or a thumbs down? You know, Sandinista is a big topic of controversy amongst Clash fans. And I expressed my opinion. What's your opinion? Let us know. Let everybody know what you thought of Sandinista when you listened to it. And did you listen to the whole thing? That's very, very interesting to know. If you listen to the whole thing, all 36 songs, let us know, Ray. We want to know what you think. So yeah, Clash singles bonanza. Listening to the Clash albums is really a cool thing, but I'm not joking, kids. It was a revelation listening to the singles from start to finish, because you can absolutely trace the development of the band's sound literally from one record to the next in a way that you can't do with the albums. Because, you know, albums come out, at least they used to come out, basically once a year. Whereas a band might release singles once every couple of months. And the Clash, like many of the great bands up to and including the punk rock era, I think were really a singles band. They, like Susie and the Banshees and the Sex Pistols and the Damned and any number of UK punk bands, released tons of singles that never came out on albums, or at the bare minimum had singles that, if they were from the album on the A side, had a song on the B side that was not on the album. So in order to get everything by the band, you really had to buy the singles. And since they came out rapid fire, you could really trace the way a band developed. And listening to the Clash singles that way, total eye-opener. It was a really rewarding experience. So we're going to go through these things one by one. You got to begin before the beginning sometimes. And before the Clash, as far as vinyl goes, there was the 101ers. The 101ers was Joe Strummer's band before he was in the Clash. They were a London pub rock band in the tradition of Ducks Deluxe, Dr. Feelgood, Eggs Over Easy, bands like that. In other words, they played stripped down simple rock and roll with some gusto. You know, they would get up and do, you know, Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and all that, but with a little more venom, a little more grit than you would normally hear from an oldies band. Dr. Feelgood were like a great example of that. And the only problem with that style of pub rock was that you had to experience it live in order to really get it. It didn't translate to vinyl very well. Because you could listen, in my opinion, you can listen to a Dr. Feelgood record and it sounds like a rock and roll record, you know? You don't get the venom and the attack. You need to see them live to get that. And that's the one reason why this 101ers record sounds okay. It's okay. It's a kind of polite sounding rock and roll record. Jason wants to know, is it on Chiswick? Yes, it's on Chiswick. But it's a repro. It's not an original. This is a repro. Got to point that out right off the bat. But it's a very good repro. Very well done. It's got 5-star rock and roll petrol on the B side and Keys to Your Heart on the A side. And it doesn't sound anything like the Clash, except for the vocals of Joe Strummer. It's definitely Joe. You cannot mistake Joe. And you can tell that he's trying to deliver the goods and he's really belting it out. But the music, I don't know, I'm sure you can look it up and hear it for yourself. It's interesting. It's an historical artifact. It's definitely pre-Clash. In fact, this record came out in classic fashion just after the 101ers broke up because Joe Strummer left them to join the Clash. Anybody who's ever run a record label, myself included, has had that happen to them. You find a band you really like, you get them to record a record, you release the record, and they break up either before the damn thing even comes out or shortly after it comes out. And all of a sudden you're sitting with boxes of records by a band that doesn't exist anymore. Any label people out there who felt that agony, can you do a thumbs down? Is it possible to do thumbs downs on Facebook? I've never really actually... How about a frowny face? Something like that. There must be some kind of way to indicate hopeless, helpless rage. The kind that you only feel when you've put out a record by a band who you really like, who have ceased to exist before it even comes out. That's what happened with the 101ers. Joe Strummer left the 101ers to join the Clash. But it's still an artifact. It's one of those things you've got to hear if you want to know the whole story. Is it for sale? Yes, it's for sale. The leap from the 101ers, which also I should mention has production that is so sparse Yeah, Jeff Terranova from Smorgasbord Records. He knows what I'm talking about. The production on this record is so sparse, you can practically hear the ashtray with a cigarette burning in it. You can hear the cigarette burning in the ashtray. That's how minimal the production is. So that's kind of interesting too, because this is 1976, the disco era, the era of Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and all that. So it really was kind of revolutionary for a band to put out a record this sparse sounding. When you put it in context, it's pretty cool. But then when you stack it up against the record that came out just a few months later, which, by the way, Jason has already spoken for, the first Clash 45, kids, White Riot, backed with 1977. The difference between these two records is like the difference between yesterday and today. You sort of take the, Alan with 2 N's says he finally got to catch the show live. Good to have you on board, Alan. Where are you coming from, Alan? Are you from some foreign country or something like that? Let us know. We want to know where you're from, Alan. And let us know if I'm pronouncing your name right. It's kind of embarrassing when you mispronounce people's names. Anyway, the difference between this and that is between yesterday and today. Even though this version of yesterday was definitely not mainstream or normal or the kind of stuff that was ever going to get radio play, it's still rooted firmly in the rock and roll tradition, whereas this sounds like a bomb going off. It sounds like a detonation. All of a sudden, everything is cranked up really high, and they're singing about topics other than 5-star rock and roll petrol. It's contemporary, it's new, it's a breakthrough. When you listen to this record in context with all the other records that were coming out on major labels at the time, and when you look at the cover art, the design of the cover, compared to your average disco record from then, it's really something. You can see why this stuff was so exciting when they first came out, when these records first came out. Stone Cold Original, CBS, produced by Mickey Foote, who is one of Joe Strummer's compatriots from the 101ers days. There's a fair amount of bleed over from the days of old to the days of new, as there necessarily must be. And Mickey Foote was one of those people. He was a friend of Joe Strummer's, and he ended up producing the first few Clash records, including the first album. So this is a rough and ready slab of raw rock and roll, and this is where it all starts for the Clash. The roots are here, and in order to understand this, you really got to hear this. It's another one of those evolutionary things. There's a direct line between yesterday and today, and it's fascinating to hear. So even though the copy with the picture sleeve is spoken for, I do have one in a CBS company sleeve that is up for grabs if anybody wants one. If you want this, message me. It could be yours. Now, the next record in the Clash canon was another step forward for the band. And what's funny about this one is it was never commercially released. This is a record that was only available to people who sent a coupon from the music magazine, the New Musical Express. They had to clip the coupon out of the magazine and send it in, and they would get this free Clash record in exchange. And what it is, I guess you could call it 3 songs, I'm not sure, but it's actually a very long interview with the band that was recorded while they were on the London Underground, aka the subway, sandwiched between 2 previously unreleased songs, one called Listen and the original version of Capitol Radio. And Listen is just basically kind of like a throwaway instrumental. I think it's most notable because it was apparently the first live song that the Clash ever played. But Capitol Radio is a really good tune, and the version you've got on here is pretty sure it's the one that came out on Black Market Clash. In fact, I know it's the one that came out on Black Market Clash later. Very sparse, very stripped down, but already sort of an advancement in songwriting from the first single. And there's only just a matter of months, if not even weeks, between these two records. I just thought it was very interesting that you could not get a quality song like Capitol Radio anywhere except on a free giveaway 45, and even then only if you read New Musical Express magazine. And kind of like that 101ers record, I gotta be clear that this is a repro. This is not an original. Originals are rare as hell. The repros are pretty rare as well. But this is a very well done repro. Back in the early 80s, you used to be able to find these things all over the place, but that was 40 years ago. Now you don't see them nowhere. But I got one right here. And it is for sale. If you want to be able to draw the line from 101ers to White Riot to Capitol Radio, you can do it. You can do it. That's why capitalism is so great. You can do stuff like that. As James Pogo said, no Elvis, Beatles, or the Rolling Stones. Does Arm-to-Light Rifles do a version of 1977? James Pogo is from the Arm-to-Light Rifles, a band who I like very much. James Pogo, let the people know if you guys do a version of 1977. And if you don't, I'm going to hereby lobby for you to do one. On my last UK tour, I played a solo acoustic version of 1977. And it seemed like no matter where I played, people knew it and they loved it. That's how strong punk rock is in the English cultural fabric. I found that to be very interesting. All right, the next Clash 45 to come out was not really a step forward in a way, but kind of a side step, which led to a big step forward. In typical record company fashion, CBS Records, which was the Clash's label, went ahead and released a 45 without their knowledge, without their input, without their permission. They simply took what they thought was the most radio-friendly song off their first album, which was Remote Control, and released it as an A-side with a live-in-the-studio version of London's Burning. And the band was totally against it. They did not want it to come out. They were embarrassed by it because they were supposedly guaranteed complete artistic control. Keep that phrase in mind, guys, complete control. They're supposedly guaranteed artistic control, but here the record company goes ahead and releases this record without their permission, using a sleeve that the CBS in-house graphics team just, put together themselves. They did a pretty good job with it. I think the B-side looks pretty authentic. But of course the A-side is just the first album cover. So the Clash were rightly pissed about this. There's no indication that they even wanted this version of London's Calling to come out. It was basically just a demo live in the studio. But the record company did it. And the Clash were pissed. Just as a funny thing, this original clipping is included in that copy of the record from one of the British weekly magazines, revealing the Clash's original fashion sense. I think that's pretty funny. So if you want it, you can have it with the original clipping. Just message me. I'll tell you all about it. So here you go. It's the first standoff between the band and the record company. The first of many that the Clash would have with CBS/Sony/Epic. Mostly in the UK. They seem to have a more harmonious relationship with the US label, but it seemed like they were always butting heads with the parent company in the UK. The record company put out this record against their wishes. So what did the Clash do? They released what might be their first genuine masterpiece. That's this record right here, kids. Complete Control. And this record was not produced by Mickey Foot alone. This record was produced by the great Jamaican dub reggae producer Lee Scratch Perry. Because if you know the Clash, you know that they were totally enamored of reggae. Reggae was the secret ingredient that Paul Simonon brought to the band. Because he grew up in Brixton, which was a very you know, as the British class system is set up, a lower class sort of ghetto neighborhood in London. And so Paul Simonon was one of the very few white families who lived in Brixton, but he was surrounded by reggae and Caribbean music, and that's the music he grew up with. So he brought that to the Clash, which was a critical ingredient for their sound. So you can imagine what happened, what the joy in the air must have been when the Clash were able to get Lee Scratch Perry to produce this record of theirs. And it seems very unlikely because it's not a reggae song. It is a full tilt rock and roll song done in the Clash style. And as far as I know, and once again, if anybody out there knows otherwise, as far as I know, this is the only rock and roll record that Lee Scratch Perry ever produced. And this is another one of those quantum leaps forward, because the production on the early Clash records is certainly good, but it's not like what Lee Scratch Perry does behind the board. The production on this record is so brilliant and so perfect because there is a ton of stuff going on, but you don't necessarily notice it. Lee Scratch Perry brought basically his full palette of studio wizardry to a Clash recording session and applied it to this song in a very, very tasteful fashion. And you don't really notice the stuff he puts on there, like the heavy dub echo and the reverb and the compression and the space, unless you like really sit there and listen. And to me, that's the real genius of the production. It just sounds like a seamless, complete whole. Everything fits together so perfectly that you don't notice there's a million things going on in there. And one of the only producers I can think of who was like that was actually Tommy Ramone from the Ramones. If you listen to the first 4 Ramones records, Rocket to Russia especially, man, there's so much crammed into the grooves of that record production-wise, you wouldn't believe it, but you don't really hear it. It doesn't reach out and whap you in the face. It's just there, and it sits very comfortably in the mix, and it's a wonderful thing. So that's what Lee Scratch Perry brought to Complete Control, besides the fact that the lyric itself was a direct FU to the record company. This song is all about how CBS released the remote control single without the band's permission or input. So you got action and you got reaction. And the other thing that makes this record very significant, besides the lyric content and Lee Scratch Perry doing the production, is you can be sure that Mick Jones was paying very close attention to what Lee Perry was doing in the studio. From day one, Mick was the one in the band who was really interested in production. Like even on the first album, there were stories about how, you know, Joe Strummer especially was like so punk rock it was ridiculous and didn't want to hear any suggestions or do anything that had ever been done before. He didn't want to mic things up properly, didn't want to tune his guitar. He was like really, really, really going out of his way to be punk rock. Whereas Mick was the guy who would go out to dinner with Mickey Foot or the engineers, and he would sit there and pick their brain. Well, so how did you do this? How did you do that? How do you mic a guitar? How do you get this sound? From day one, Mick Jones was the guy absorbing all the production techniques and the tricks. And I can only imagine him hovering over Lee Scratch Perry's shoulder just watching. Man, what a golden opportunity. And what a killer B-side, City of the Dead. Great classic Clash B-side. So I got 2 of these available for you people out there. I got one with the picture sleeve, which is going to be pricier than the one without the picture sleeve. But each record's in really good shape, plays fine. Depending on your budget, you can have one or the other. And don't worry, Jason, I got one for you already. That's been taken care of. This band is moving forward. The next step in the Clash singles bonanza was also a big old source of controversy, and that was Jason's copy of Clash City Rockers. Once again, you've got Mickey Foot in the production seat, and you can tell that he also learned a lot from Lee Scratch Perry. Technically, the Complete Control single was co-produced by Lee Scratch Perry and Mickey Foot. I think it's more Lee Perry than Mickey Foot. But I do believe that Mickey Foot took a lot away from it, because the production on Clash City Rockers goes back to the rough and ready kind of basics, but there's definitely more finesse in the sound. It's more well-rounded. It's bigger. It's fuller. The separation of the instruments is better. There was definitely some homework being taken care of between that record and this. And it's also got another great B-side, Jail Guitar Doors. Really, really cool B-side that you just could not get at the time, unless you bought the single. Same thing with the A-side. This was a single-only release. That was not on the full-length album. The problem, as it was that Mickey Foot kind of pulled a CBS on the band. It was his opinion as a producer that the tempo of the song wasn't fast enough. So when he sent the tape off for mastering, he sped it up. He adjusted the pitch, I think, by almost an entire note, which is something that I never noticed for years and years and years. I had read about how Mickey Foot sped up he sped up the recording to make it faster. But of course, when you do that, you move all of the sounds further up so they sound squeakier. And in Mick Jones's case, especially, he sounds like a chipmunk because it's playing too fast. And I never noticed that until fairly recently when I dropped this record on. And I was like, yeah, that's right. Everything does sound too high-pitched. And that is why Mickey Foot got the unceremonious boot out of the producer's sleeve for The Clash. The Clash didn't know about what he did to the speed of this record until they heard the pressed vinyl, and it was already out in the stores, apparently. And they were enraged, so they got rid of Mickey Foot like that. And the Clash were very good at Stalinist revising their personnel. Mickey Foot was the second key member of the team to be completely, utterly dismissed without discussion for screwing up. The first one was original Clash lead guitarist Keith Levine, who, as you may or may not know, later went on with Johnny Rotten to form Public Image Limited, which I could do a whole show on Public Image Limited and how fucking awesome they were in their day. Oh my God. And James Pogo, oh, this is interesting. Did you know that Hoxton Tom from the Four Skins is on the Clash City Rockers sleeve? I did not. I had no idea. Is that Hoxton Tom? Somewhere on this gang of hooligans running rampant in the streets, Hoxton Tom from the Four Skins is one of them. I had no idea. I will definitely have to study the sleeve a lot more carefully. That's pretty cool. Now, of course, nowadays, fixing a problem like the incorrect pitch is a lot easier to fix because a lot of turntables, if not most, have a pitch control. So you could just slow down the pitch to the right speed, and using your own ear, you can hear the natural tuning and the natural sound of their voices and get the record the way it's supposed to sound. But back then, you needed a very expensive turntable to do that. So yeah, this pissed off the band. They fired the producer and moved on to the next one. I have 2 copies of this record available. One with picture sleeve, one without. My main man Jason already got the picture sleeve one, but the non-picture sleeve one is up for grabs. It's quite a bit less than the one with the picture sleeve. Great record, even without a picture sleeve. Great record. Now the next one is truly the great leap forward for the Clash. By now, The first album has been on the market for a while. The Clash have done a whole bunch of singles. They're growing steadily. They've been produced by Lee Scratch Perry, who brought a lot to the table. Mickey Foote learned a lot about production. Mick Jones was learning a lot about production. They've already been listening to lots and lots of reggae, and you know, they do their own versions of reggae songs like Police and Thieves on the first album. But all of a sudden, with one record, with one fell swoop, everything falls into place. Everything crystallizes, and you've got what is, in my opinion, the first... I don't know if I said this already. I'll say it again, because one's opinion is subject to change from 1 minute to the next. The first truly great Clash record. I might have said that about Complete Control a minute ago, but I'm going to say it now about White Man in Hammersmith, Palais. This is the one where, as Bob Dylan would probably say, they bring it all back home. For so many reasons. First of all, the song itself, White Man in Hammersmith, Palais. This is the one where they fuse everything together. The rock and roll, the reggae, and the punk rock attitude. And this song is not like Pat Travers playing a Bob Marley song, for example. It's not a rock band playing a reggae song. It is a rock band seamlessly fusing the sounds of reggae with the sounds of rock and roll with the punk rock attitude. It's basically reggae verses, punk rock choruses, and it's put together so perfectly that you don't really notice it. And it's just like Lee Scratch Perry's production. It's so perfect, it doesn't whack you in the face. It's just, it sounds natural. It sounds real. It sounds organic. And White Man in Hammersmith, Palais, I think this is the real birth of the Clash sound. You know, the sound of London Calling, the sound of Sandinista, the sound that would eventually evolve into what they did on Combat Rock. It really, really had its birth right here. And the B-side, another great, great non-album B-side, sung by Mick Jones, Prisoner. Packaging is great. It's got a minimalist yellow sleeve with the band name on it. And for the first time, custom art design labels. And the label tells a story. It's got action and consequence. Draw your own conclusions. And it's beautifully laid out. White Man in Hammersmith, Palais, kids. This is the real deal. This is the Clash really, really finding their footing. It's for sale. Now, the next couple of 45s, once again, they sort of take a sideways step. Like 7 Seconds would say, regress no way, but they sort of go sideways. The next two singles were both album cuts from their second album, Give 'Em Enough Rope, which I talked about last week. It was produced by Sandy Pearlman, who was Blue Oyster Cult's manager and producer, because the record company wanted to get a more radio-friendly sound for American radio. It was one of those typical major label cynical ploys that they did in an effort to sell records. The results are not bad. They're not bad, they're just different. There's just like layers and layers and layers of guitar and all this sheen on the production. It's a massive sounding record. And so I guess as part of that strategy, they just released the next two singles as being album cuts. The first one was Tommy Gun, which I don't have. It's the only one of this original run of singles I don't have. Tommy Gun backed with an old Mick Jones song called 1-2 Crush on You. And the second one is English Civil War, backed with Pressure Drop, which is another great rock reggae fusion. And who did Pressure Drop in the original? Toots and the Maytals, I believe, did Pressure Drop originally. Am I correct on that? Let's see if I can read these credits. Yeah, Toots and the Maytals originally did Pressure Drop. And the Clash do a very, very credible version of it. Kind of in the style of Police and Thieves on the first album, but not as punk rock gung-ho. So this is a pretty good holding action. Album cut with non-album B-side. Great picture sleeve, too, from the Animal Farm animated film, which is also a very Clash sort of theme. Next record in the Clash singles bonanza is actually an EP, an extended play 45 RPM record featuring not one, not two, not three, but 4 songs. The Clash Cost of Living EP. 4 songs in a really cool deluxe fold-out sleeve. Not only a deluxe fold-out sleeve, but an actual printed inner sleeve as well. The band took a lot of flack for releasing this EP at the time and calling it the Cost of Living because it was actually, I think, 50% more expensive than a regular 7-inch single. Maybe even double, I'm not sure, but there was a lot of beef about the price. But, I mean, let's face it, you got value for money. Not only 4 songs, but all this great packaging. You know, custom labels. Nice custom labels. They were missing from the 2 singles that came out from the album. But the custom labels are back. 4 songs. Not only that, you get 2 of the absolute classic Clash tunes. You got I Fought the Law and a blazing hot remake of Capitol Radio. In my opinion, this is the version of Capitol Radio. The people who Sent Away for the 45 had their exclusive for this song for a very long time. Now everybody can have it, and not only that, a different version. So everybody's happy. 2 versions, 1 exclusive, 1 not exclusive, both great. But I think this one has the edge. And of course, I Fought the Law. I mean, come on, man. What more do you have to say about that? And the other 2 songs are really cool. Once again, produced by The Clash. Let me make sure I got this right, which really meant Mick Jones. You know, I'm sure the other guys were there to one degree or another, but it's pretty much understood and agreed by all that Mick Jones was really the producer on these records. And it's a really neat, clean, punchy sounding record. And the songwriting, especially with Gates of the West and Groovy Times, which are 2 highly, highly underrated songs in the Clash catalog. Once again, they move in a direction that's beyond punk rock. It shows the Clash unafraid to ramp down the tempo a little bit, go a little bit less on the sonic attack, go a little bit easy on the yelling and the screaming, and produce a style of punk rock that's, dare I say, easier on the ear? But it works. It really works. As a 4-song whole, this record, I think, leads directly to what they were going to do on London Calling. I mean, if you listen to this and then listen to London Calling, direct line. Direct line. This record, of course, and I'll mention too that all of these records that I have just talked about, not a single one of them was released in the US of A. Not a one. And certainly not with picture sleeves. This one, like all the others, was not released in the USA until the American version of the first Clash album came out, and I talked about this last week. You got this hybridized version of the UK Clash album that had a bunch of those 45s stuck onto the album itself. But you also got, in the singles tradition, a bonus 45 stuck in with the album that has Gates of the West and Groovy Times on it. And of course, I Fought the Laws on the vinyl itself. So with the purchase of the original US pressing of The Clash, you got 3/4 of the Cost of Living EP. And it was only the first pressing of the US album that had the bonus 45 with the vinyl. So if you're going to be a singles completist, kids, you need this one too. And I got it. and it's available. And I don't have to tell you already that the price is right. All right. It's getting really exciting here. The next Clash 45 came out in 1979. It wasn't exactly a reversion to what they did with those songs from Give 'Em Enough Rope, because this came out, if I recall correctly, before the album of the same title did. I'm talking about London Calling, mofos. London Calling. No explanation needed. The B-side, Armageddon Time. The Clash doing a straightforward take on a great reggae song. This is my favorite Clash reggae song of all. They really, really do this one justice. Great tune. And you can only get it on the 45, non-album track. It's here, it's now, it's mine, but it wants to be yours. Message me, talk to me, listen to some classic Clash reggae the way it was meant to be listened to on a UK 45 RPM single with a small hole. So cool, so cool. Now, the Clash kind of went easy on singles for quite a while after that. At least as far as 7-inch 45s go. Before their next album, Sandinista, was released, they did a bit of a, kind of like a studio session job on a 45 by a guy named Time and Dog. And Time and Dog was another one of Joe Strummer's old running mates from the days of the 101ers. And he later ended up being in the Mescaleros. But prior to that, he was basically a street busker. And as the story goes, he just randomly ran into Mick Jones one day on the street. Mick Jones invited him to record a record, and this was the result. Mick Jones produced it. I'm 99% sure that Topper, the Clash's drummer, plays drums on it. Not sure what the involvement of either Paul Simonon or Joe Strummer is. I'm sure that that information is posted out there somewhere. If anybody knows, please feel free to comment. But you can tell it's Mick Jones' production for sure. And to me, it sounds like Topper playing the drums. And in fact, when Sandinista came out, they put this song as is on the record. Side 5, track 1. They just took this and put it on the Clash album and credited it to the Clash. But this is the original 45, and very telling that there's no credits whatsoever. Not on the sleeve, not on the disc. You can read this thing with a microscope and not glean any clues as to who produced or played on the record. But this is the original 45 from 1981, pre-Sandinista. Song used on Sandinista. This is the original. And yes, it's for sale. Now, the next record that came out was a 45. The A-side was the call-up from Sandinista. The B-side was called Stop the World. I don't have that one. Sorry, guys. After Sandinista, they did a single that only came out, 98% sure it only came out as a 12-inch. I don't recall ever seeing a 7-inch of this one. But once again, I welcome correction. Because when I do Tent Talks Tunes, I'm doing it from my experience, which is based on what it was like being there in the 1970s and 1980s, collecting these records in real time, and only knowing anything about them based on what I could read in the magazines or in radio interviews or by hearsay or hanging out at the record store, you know? The body of information that's available to us now via the internet just didn't exist back then. So what you're getting is my real-time, on-the-ground recollection of how these things were released and how they came out. So I might not be 100% right. As said before, I welcome correction. Pretty sure it was only a 12-inch single, and that was indeed Radio Clash. This came out shortly after Sandinista, And this is where Mick Jones really starts to get into rap and hip-hop. And the Clash do their take on rap. And it's pretty good. The production on the B-side, Radio Clash, it's actually got technically 3 B-sides. Radio Clash, This Is Radio Clash, Outside Broadcast, and Radio 5. Mick really gets into some wild dub-style production on a hip-hop track. And to me, it's not the kind of stuff you'll sit down and listen to and just really dig and analyze, but it's the kind of stuff that sounds great playing in the background. I listen to stuff like this when I'm washing the dishes or, cleaning the house or whatever. It's just really good space-filling music. And I mean that in the true sense of filling space. These kinds of wild dub sounds and spacey sounds and non-musical sounds just sound good there. And in fact, I was gonna tell the story last week, and this record kind of reminds me of it. For a while, I was hanging out with a woman who lived in a not exactly a squat, but a an old repurposed factory in New Haven, Connecticut. It was a factory that had been, abandoned after the industry moved out. Eventually, a bunch of artists took it over and made arts spaces and arts lofts. And soon after that, people started moving in there and living there. And it wasn't a squat per se, because people were paying rent. And it wasn't dilapidated, filthy, and grimy, because it just wasn't. There's electricity and running water, and people put in amenities like showers and sinks, but no one was supposed to be living there. It was definitely not a residential spot. It has since been cleared out, as far as I understand. They totally kicked everybody out of there. But at the time, there were a bunch of people living there, and you could tell you were in an old factory. This was not some luxury conversion. This was an old damn factory that she was living in. And I was visiting one day, and I brought in my record player, and I had a copy of Sandinista with me, and we played Sandinista that night, just hanging out. I swear to God, Sandinista never sounded more perfect and more completely in its place and in its space than it did in this old abandoned factory that people were living in, with a bit of a wink from the landlord. It sounded perfect. I can't even really begin to describe just how perfect it was, but it's like that music was made to be listened to in that kind of atmosphere, in that sort of environment. It was wonderful. It's a music listening experience I will never forget. I'm sure you guys have had experiences like that. Post if you want to, but that was one of mine. That just absolutely felt so right and so good. Oh, so good. Let me scroll down a little bit here. It seems like the comments... Oh, yeah, there we go. We got our comments. Just making sure everybody's still there. We only got a few more to go here, kids. Another deal right around the time of Sandinista, in which the Clash acted as a backing band, like they did for Time and Dog, was a graffiti artist from New York City called Futura 2000. They invited Futura 2000 to do spray paint murals live on stage when the Clash were doing their residency at Bond's Disco Casino. And then later on, the Clash, incognito, backed this guy up on a rap record. Kind of a period piece, not something I listen to for enjoyment every day, all day, but it's pretty cool. Actually, it says right there on the label, produced by the Clash, meaning Mick Jones. Came out on the Celluloid label. They did a lot of hip-hop stuff, New York style, in the early 80s. This one's not for sale. This one's mine. I'm keeping this one, because I'm a Clash completist, after all. Now we get into the home stretch. Combat rock. In my opinion, the apotheosis of the original Clash sound. There were some Clash singles from that album. One of the biggest hits, Should I Stay or Should I Go? This has got a non-album B-side called Cool Confusion. Cool Confusion, along with the other B-sides, which were Long Time Jerk, which is on the Rock the Casbah 45. And there was another one, First Night Back in London, which I don't have here. But all those B-sides were originally going to be on the album Rat Patrol from Fort Bragg, which is the double album length version of combat rock. And I talked about that a little bit last week. If you want to hear the unedited, unexpurgated, some of those songs that got chopped from Rat Patrol from Fort Bragg, you need to get these combat rock singles, because that's where those songs ended up. So Cool Confusion on this one, which I've got the picture sleeve for. Longtime Jerk on Rock the Casbah. I've got a couple of non-picture sleeve versions, but I got one that's got a jukebox strip. This is an actual record that appeared in a jukebox and was played in a diner somewhere in New Jersey, probably. Jukebox strip. How cool is that? Original 1982, kids. Got a few of those. And then in the category of long-lost songs from the Rat Patrol from Fort Bragg category. Did I say category twice? Who cares? After Topper was Stalinist revised out of the band, he did a solo album called Drumming Man, and he released a single called Leave It to Luck. Leave It to Luck is on the A side. A song called Casablanca is on the B side. Now, what's this got to do with the Clash, you might ask? I'll tell you. The song Casablanca is an instrumental version of one of the lost songs from Rat Patrol from Fort Bragg. It was originally called The Beautiful People Are Ugly Too, with lyrics by Joe Strummer, and it got yanked from Rat Patrol from Fort Bragg. It did not make it onto Combat Rock, and was lost for a very, very long time, until it got reissued many, many years later on some anthology of some sort. But Topper took the song with him when he did his solo career and cut a version without lyrics on the B side of this single. And it's a really good song. This is a song that would have been, I think, perfect opening up side 2 of Combat Rock. Because the first, in my opinion, the first 2 songs on side 2 of Combat Rock suck. Adam Tan and Overpowered by Funk, I hate those songs. If this song had been on side 2, Combat Rock would have been an even better record than it is. You would have had a side 2 that would have really kicked ass instead of only having a kick-ass second part. And that song only ever appeared on this 45. And to the best of my knowledge, it's never been reissued. So if you want an arcane, obscure, and weird missing part of the Clash musical puzzle, you need this record, guys. You need it. I got it. I got not only one of them, but I got 2 of them. If any 2 of you out there want to buy 1 or 2 of these, I can help you. I can help you out. And finally, the last Clash single we're going to talk about today, because it was the last Clash single. The last Clash single. It's been a weird day, guys. I've been on the run an awful lot today. I'm a little bit discombobulated. Hope you'll bear with me. But the last Clash 45 ever released was from the much maligned, much discussed, and much disgusting album, Cut the Crap. We talked about that at length last week. Believe me, I'm not an apologist for that album in any way, shape, or form. That album just flat out stinks. I've actually seen some people who like that record. Mazel tov, more power to ya. I do not share your opinion. I just don't. I just can't. There was a single from that album. This is England on the A side. Why do I have this record? Because A, I'm a completist, and B, because of the B side. 2 songs on the B side. Do It Now and Sex Mad Roar. And wouldn't you know it, The A side, as we've discussed last week on Tent Talks Tunes, is the god-awful, ghastly Bernie Rhodes product with a drum machine and synthesizers and overbearing, obnoxious football chants. You know, it's one of those deals where maybe the idea wasn't so bad, but the way it was executed is just crummy. But the B side, for some strange reason, actually has the full band playing the songs the way they were meant to be played. Guitar, bass, drums, and vocals. This is the only vinyl appearance by the post-Mick Jones Clash, with Pete Howard on the drums, who was a phenomenal drummer. Sorry. Yeah, I got that right. Pete Howard on the drums, Vince White on guitars, and Nick Sheppard on guitars. These songs totally rock. They effing rock. They effing rock, man. It really makes you wonder, what if this band, the 5-piece post-Mick Jones band, had been allowed into the studio to record the songs that came out on Cut the Crap? It would have been a good record. Like, no fooling. It would have been a real good record. I think it would have harkened back to Give 'Em Enough Rope. And that from Give 'Em Enough Rope, that band, the post-Mick Jones band, could conceivably have evolved the same way that the Mick Jones band did. They could have gone in any number of directions by then, but they were never allowed the chance. That's why this record, in my opinion, which, by the way, is not for sale, not this one, this record is really key because it shows what the great lost possibilities were of the Clash. And they had basically broken up before this record even came out, which leads us right back full circle to the beginning with the 101ers, who broke up before their record even came out. Yin and yang, kids. Positive and negative, black and white. The good, the bad, and the ugly. And that, my friends, was our trip through the Clash singles catalog. And as we discussed, the vast majority of those are for sale. A few of them have already been spoken for, but most of them haven't. So if you guys want them, message me and let me know. We'll talk. We'll talk. Because I was born to talk tunes. John Sheehan says that he was in a band that was going to cover Cut the Crap beginning to end, but it was so bad they couldn't do it. You know, John Sheehan, I think you should just hold your breath, pinch your nose, and jump in and do it. Get yourself a hot punk rock band and cover those songs and play them the way they were supposed to be played. And it's actually not that difficult because you can go online and find the full band versions of just about all the songs on Cut the Crap, because they played most of those songs on tour in 1984 and 1985. And you can get almost every song on Cut the Crap in a real, honest-to-God, guitar, bass, drums, vocal version. And they're good. They're good tunes. You don't have to listen to Cut the Crap to learn them. Whew, thankfully. So that's your homework. John Sheehan, I give it to you. Enough said. And that is indeed enough said, kids. I'm out of here. I want to thank everybody for listening to Tent Talks Tunes and digging my yap about the Clash. Hopefully, if my talk affects you the same way that the Clash music affects me, we'll all be happy people and playing lots of Clash in the near future. I personally do expect to be back in about 167 hours' time. So till we meet again, guys, this is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.